Alright guys, today I'll be telling the story about The Who's drummer, Keith Moon. So eventually what I was going to say is that it's August 23rd, 2022, and apparently it is actually the drummer's birthday, so if Keith was alive today, he would have turned 76. But anyways, today I'll be telling the story about Keith Moon, the drummer for the rock band The Who. But anyways, let's start. And if you apparently do see the video which I talked about Keith Moon, like all the bandmate members, you can check that video out. And apparently I won't post that link, but you guys can just check the video out for the summary of the Who band. And that's the part where I actually did include Keith Moon. So eventually, let's start the story. Keith John Moon was born on August 23rd, 1946, in Wembley, England. So, to his parents, Alfred Charles and Kathleen Winifred. So eventually, when he was a boy, he was very, very hyperactive, and he had a restless imagination for the Goon Show and music. So, what I'll just say is that Keith Moon's childhood was definitely a hard one to say. It's because you know that he is a very, very hyperactive boy with an imagination, you know? He's like very hyper. So, during his childhood times, Keith Moon was hyperactive and he was a mediocre student. So, what I was really going to say is that Keith Moon attended Alberton Secondary Middle Modern School. But he failed his 11 plus exam. So, eventually, Moon was apparently going to attend a grammar school. But his art teacher apparently showed in the report, saying that he is retarded artistically, he's idiotic in other respects. But his teacher had wrote that Moon apparently has a great ability, but he tends to show off. Now what I'll just say is that Moon did apparently have like ADHD or Asperger's syndrome, but I don't really think that Keith may be autistic, you know? Like, I would apparently say, in my opinion, that Keith would have just had ADHD or would have autism, you know? He definitely had a tendency to show off at school, so what I'll just say is that Keith definitely did have like tendencies to show off. Moon had joined the Sea Cadet Corps at just 12 years old on the bugle, which I mentioned in my previous video. The bugle is actually the simplest bass instrument, which normally has no balls or other pitch alternating devices. All pitch control is done by verifying the players and butcher. Consequently, the bugle is limited to notes with the harmonic series. But Keith apparently did find the instrument to be very difficult, and he decided to take the drums instead. In 1961, at just 14 years old, Keith Moon dropped out of school. And he apparently did... So apparently, what I was going to say is that Keith Moon dropped out of school at just 14 years old. And he actually did... And Keith apparently bought his own drum kit after he was a technician plumber, if I'm not mistaken. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that at around Easter, Keith just enrolled himself to Harrow Technical College. He was like, his job was a radio repairman, and apparently, what I was gonna say is that he was lucky enough to buy himself a drum kit. So eventually, Moon had took early lessons from the loudest compulsory drummers at Screaming Lord Lunch, Carlo Little. So eventually, at 10 shillings per lesson, Moon's early lifestyle was influenced by jazz, American surf music, and rhythm and blues. This was actually noted by the Los Angeles studio drummer Hal Blaine. His favorite musicians were jazz, particularly Gene Krupa, and Moon had also admired Elvis Presley's original drummer DJ Fontana and the Shadows' original drummer Tony Meehan. So eventually, he enjoyed singing with a particular interest in Motown, and he was actually idolized by the Beach Boys. Roger Daltrey later said that Moon would have given the opportunity, he would have loved to play the California band, even if it's at the Who's playing. During this time, Moon joined his first serious band, the S-Squad, replacing his best friend Gary Evans. In December of 1962, he joined the Beachcombers, which were a semi-professional cover band playing hits by the group such as the Shadows. So eventually, he played the Beachcombers all day jobs. So Moon had worked in the sales department of the British Gypsum, which had an interest in turning professional. In April of 1964, at just 17 years old, Moon was the youngest person to audition for The Who, which was a replacement for Doug Sandham. The Beachcombers continued as the local cover for his departure. Commonly, Keith Moon did join The Who at some point, but there was a problem with him. Keith Moon was noted for his unique style, and he was often eccentric, self-destructive, and also has an addiction to drugs and alcohol during that time. Now, drinking hard is very, very common in the 60s and 70s, especially when you want people to drink alcohol and take drugs. I'll just consider this one as a very, very dangerous thing for people to do. The cause of it is that you may have like body weight with that. And when you see the pictures of Keith having these kinds of like drug addiction, especially like alcohol and some drugs, you apparently do see that he definitely did take too much of alcohol, and apparently he has like a bit of like body weight. So eventually what I was gonna say is that Keith did like a lot of these kinds of things, which ended up being dead, and his health was deteriorated as well because of the alcohol. So eventually, let's continue now. So eventually, Keith was actually dressed up in ginger clothes, and he had his hair dyed ginger. Pete Townsend described him as a ginger version. He would claim to be bandmates, and he could play better. So eventually, Keith did have several rings, and apparently, this somehow got him drunk at times. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Moon also did clash with Daltrey and Townsend, and there was absolutely nothing in common in music. Moon's drumming style did affect the band's musical structure, although Entwistle initially found Moon's lack of controversial timekeeping problematic. It was also an original sound. Now what I'll just say is that Keith is definitely a drumming genius. When you see the moves right here, he was an octopus. No one would ever see a drummer play like Keith Moon before. According to Alice Cooper for The Final 24, the story of Keith Moon and how he died, well, I apparently saw Alice Cooper saying this one. Keith Moon was an octopus. No one would ever see a drummer like him play like that before. So eventually, what I was going to say is that Keith's style of drumming was considered unique by his bandmates. Sometimes he would play the drums very fast, or he would play slow, according to his mood. So, here's the quote for Keith Moon's Melody Maker in September of 1970. I suppose as a drummer, I'm adequate. I've got no aspirations to be a great drummer. I just wanted to play the drums for the Who, and that's it. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that, unlike the compulsory rock drummers such as Ginger Baker and John Bonham, Moon hated the drum solos and refused to play them for a concert at the Madison Square Garden. Townsend and Entwistle decided to stop playing Wasp Man and to listen to Keith's drum solo. Moon continued briefly and stopped, shouting, "Drum solos are boring." On June 23, 1977, he made a guest appearance at Led Zeppelin in Los Angeles. So eventually, Moon was inspired to sing some lead vocals on the song, with 3 members just handling on the on-stage vocals. Moon would attempt to sing backup "I Can't Explain." He would definitely make humorous commentary during song announcements. Sometimes, this led into the game where Moon would sneak to join the singing. At the end of Happy Jack, Townsend can be heard I say, "I saw ya." Moon apparently did try to sneak into the studio. And apparently there were the high backing chords as pictures of Lily. Moon's performance on Bellboy saw him abandoned by the vocal performance as a singing character, which gave him, in Fletcher's word, full license to give it up, the reputation for a lecherous string. It was exactly the kind of performance the Who needed to bring him back down to earth. Moon composed "I Need You," an instrumental Cobwebs. Now, he also actually co-composed "The Ox," which is an instrumental from the single album My Generation. So the drummer had produced a violin solo on Baba O'Reilly. Moon did sat in the congas in the East of Eden at the London's Lyceum Ballroom, and afterwards he suggested the violinist Dave Alvarez to play the track. Moon played a 4 and a 5-piece later drum kit during his early career. In 1964 and 1965, his setups were inclusive of the Ludwig jumps and the Zion cymbals. He began to indulge in these premier drums in the late 1965. He apparently did have the right rhythms to ride and clash cymbals. His new, larger configuration was notable for the presence of 2 drums, along with Ginger Baker. So, this kit wasn't used for the Who performance in 1967, the Monterey Pop Festival, and pictures of Lily drum kit was named from his work. So Keith apparently did play the drums, his old drums, which has a picture of Lily. So eventually, the drum kit was no longer used as of 1969. By 1970, Moon began to use timbals and timpanis, which included the rest of his career. So eventually, the kit was actually filled with copper fittings and later given to a young Zak Starsley, who was the son of Ringo Starr from the former British band The Beatles. Since he was the touring band player for the English rock band The Who since 1996, we can apparently do see that Ringo Starr's son, Zak, is still performing on stage with Roger and Pete. So then, at the early show Railway Tavern in Harrow, Townsend began to smash his guitar after breaking it. And when the audience demanded he do it again, Moon kicked over his drum kit. And I do remember Moon did put gunpowder into his drum at the Smother Brothers concert. Unfortunately, none of them were hurt. So eventually, what I was going to say is that it was a terrible experience for Keith Moon to put some gunpowder into his drum kit. So eventually, what I was going to say is that a flying cymbal did slice up Moon's arm. It was very, very painful to see someone doing something like that. Unfortunately for that, Roger did punch Keith Moon in the nose. And apparently, with no choice, they fired him for reasons. Because Roger thought that Keith had stored illegal drugs inside the drum kit. Well, it's kind of true. It was actually kind of a coincidence why, but I don't I don't think Keith was just trying to do that. He was just trying to do this one for a show. You can't just blame a person for that. Now, what I'll just say is that Keith definitely does have like ADHD, or he definitely does have some autism like that, which I do believe. I'm not too sure if it's true or not, but according to that, Keith did have some ADHD problems, which led to himself being a very, very hyperactive kid back in the days. Now, while Moon was actually only interested in working for The Who, he participated in some projects such as the advertisement for Don't Worry Baby in 1974 and The Who Sellout, which apparently did show a lot of fake ads, which also included the three remaining band members of Roger Daltrey, Pete Townshend, and John Entwistle. So eventually, Moon had maybe inspired the name for Led Zeppelin, which he apparently considered leaving The Who in 1966. He spoke with Entwistle and Page of forming in a supergroup, Moon or Entwistle. So eventually, this one is in the 2007 amazing film, The Amazing Journey of The Who, where Daltrey and Townshend have reminiscence of of the late drummer Keith Moon. And also for this, The Amazing Journey of The Who was actually a British documentary featuring the Who band, which includes Roger Daltrey, Pete Townshend, John Entwistle, and Kenny Jones. Eventually, for John Entwistle and Kenny Jones, what I was going to say is that they're no longer in the Who band, but this was actually dated back before Kenny Jones left the Who band, and John Entwistle dying at just 57 years old in 2002, causing the Who members Roger Daltrey and Pete Townshend to sing as a duo. So eventually, what I was going to say is that there may be some times where Daltrey and Moon fought on stage, and Roger Daltrey was kicked out of the band temporarily. But without one disastrous show, the band decided to administrate Roger Daltrey. So eventually, Keith apparently did make a cameo in Frank Zappa's 200 Motels. As a nun, he was afraid of dying from a drug overdose, and it only took 13 days to film. Now, he was only from a holiday camp of the early days of the British rock and roll in 1973. That will be the day, and he reprises the role for the film's 1974 sequel, Stardust. And he was playing Uncle Ernie in Ken Russell's 1975 adaptation of Tommy. Moon's last appearance in 1978 was Sextet, which is an American musical company which featured Keith Moon's last appearance before he died. So, going on to his destructive behavior. Now, I'm not really going to read all this because it's going to take a lot of time, and we've only got like around 18 minutes to film like that. So eventually, what I was going to say is I'm going to read this one as well. When you got the money and you do the kind of things I get up to, people laugh and say that you're eccentric, which is a polite way of saying that you're fucking mad. Keith Moon. Moon had led to a destructive lifestyle. During the Who's early days, he began taking amphetamines, which is a drug. And apparently, this drug is a very dangerous drug, and it can kill you. So eventually, in an MTV interview, Keith Moon stated that his favorite food was French blues. Now that one apparently is going to scare you. French blues is a drug. It is also known as Dextimo, which is a brand name for a combination of a drug which was sodium aldehyde and deoxymethyl sulfate. It's the same pill which was slightly abused, but this one is no longer manufactured. Now guys, don't get confused with French blues and French fries, because we don't want anyone to take drugs, and drugs are bad for you. What I was gonna say is that I'm so sorry for scaring you for saying that I say um, French blues, but don't be confused with the difference between French blues and French fries. Alright? But anyways, let's continue. Keith apparently did flush some pills down the toilet when Roger Daltrey actually saw him doing that. Keith apparently had escalated into alcoholism and drug addiction in later life. Suddenly, he had the same stages that everyone goes through, the bloody drug corridor. As later reflected, drinking suits it a lot better. According to Townsend, Moon began destroying hotel rooms with the who actually stayed in the Berlin Hilton in the late 1966. In addition to hotel rooms, Moon destroyed friends' homes, including his own. Now that's really, really scary because why would people do that? Are they drunk? Yes, they are drunk because of the alcoholism they are having, especially with drugs. Now what I was going to say is that it is bad for a person to do all these kinds of things. This will cause you to go crazy, and apparently you won't be able to talk that much. You're just going to be drunk, you know? Now, there was actually one time that Andrew Neil and Matthew Kent estimated the destruction of hotel toilets and plumbing would cost $3,000. And it's often infused by drugs and alcohol. Moon's way of demonstrating his eccentricity will go far into them, and then the assistant butler observed that he's just trying to make people laugh and be Mr. Funny. And you just love him, you just enjoy him, but he won't go far. It's like a train that you won't stop. On the way to the airport on the limousine, Moon had insisted the bandmates say that, "I forgot something." At the hotel, he ran back to his room, grabbed the television, and threw the TV out of the window into the swimming pool below. And then he jumped back into the limo saying, "I nearly forgot." Now that part really made me cracked up, saying, why would Keith Moon do that? Why would he apparently do that? Well, because of his eccentric and destructive behavior, Keith Moon did destroy a lot of hotel property. And apparently, Keith Moon's health actually did decline, to say that there's actually about the rigors that these shows that previously kept him in shape, but Keith apparently did become a severe alcoholic in the end. He was going to just drink and just changing into lovable booze and just turn himself into a boyish drink. David Huntham recalled the drinking went into a joke for being a problem. On that will be the day it will be caused of social drinking, and by the time Stardust was a hard drinking, exploding toilets. So Moon's favorite thing to do was to explode toilets with cherry bombs. He also had M80 fireworks to the sticks of dynamite. It became his choice. Moon loved to do that. He actually did purchase 500 cherry bombs, and this thing began in 1965 when Moon's toilet prosthetics began. So eventually what I was going to say is that Keith Moon apparently did explode toilets a lot until Moon had exhausted his supply of explosive. There was no toilet or no hotel that was safe. So Townsend had walked into the bathroom of Moon's hotel room and noticed the toilet had disappeared with the S-band remaining. Now, there was a problem with Keith these days because I don't know if the joke is going to crack up, but definitely what I was going to say is that Keith did explode too many toilets with cherry bombs. Now, cherry bombs are a very, very dangerous weapon to use, especially dynamites and M80 fireworks. These fireworks are banned in our country, and if you use them illegally, you could kill people like that. Now, this is not a safe way to do this because he definitely did explode toilets like that. Now, I'll just think that it may not be funny for some people, but then Peter Townsend and Roger Daltrey did crack that joke up back then, So, on August 23rd, 1967 was Keith Moon's 21st birthday. So The Who apparently did want to celebrate Keith Moon's birthday at the Flint, Michigan hotel in the Holiday Inn. So eventually, there was a tour opening for the British band Herman's Hermits, which was another band during the British invasion. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Keith apparently did have like a lot of destructive things. So eventually, it was published fact that he was 21 and when he was able to drink. Now, the drummer immediately began drinking on the arrival of Flint. Unfortunately, Keith Moon was drunk at the time. And apparently Keith Moon had started a food fight and knocked over the manager's face. Now what I'll just say is that this is really like unacceptable for Keith to do it. Even though Keith was just trying to be happy, he just stopped drinking, you know? So apparently in the Flint Hotel there was apparently cake, drinks such as alcohol with some Coke and lemonade as well. But Keith apparently did drink a lot and he was a severe alcoholic. Now that part apparently did scare me a lot because Keith apparently did return to the hotel along with the other Who band members. He started a food fight and decided to throw the cake, which was flying into the air. The police was coming, and apparently what I was gonna say is that Keith was naked from the waist down, which I do believe that Keith did this one just because he wants to be funny. Well, what I'll just say is it's not that kind of a funny joke when you're banned. No, I just say it's like very lightsome. It's gruesome. It's bad, you know? I would never apparently see Keith Moon doing these kind of things. Like, why would he apparently do this? Like, why would he do that? Is he like going to try to have another food fight? Well, he may have another food fight, but things may look a lot different, as you may see. So eventually, during that time, Keith apparently threw objects into the swimming pool and the piano was destroyed. Keith also drove a car inside the swimming pool, which I do believe Keith just did that. It's because he wants to do all these kinds of things he wants to do. You can't just force the person to stop doing these kinds of things. They are not going to stop unless you divorce them, which I do believe people would divorce them to say that they can be divorced, you know? By that time, when Keith Moon was at the dentist, they couldn't give him anesthetic due to his immigration, and the remainder of the tooth was knocked out. Unfortunately for the Who band, they deserved a lifetime ban due to Keith Moon's destructive behavior. Now, what I'll just say is that Keith definitely did drunk himself to the ground. I mean, really hard to the ground. When you see the pictures of him in this interview to say that he is in his early 30s, he may be 40, he may be in his way worse in his early 40s or 50s or 100s, so way worse than that. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that in 1973 of the Quentin Nebula tour in the US, Keith Moon passed out on stage after his drink was spiked with horse tranquilizer. Now Keith Moon definitely did drink a lot of brandy and passed out. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Keith had drunk himself and passed out on stage. During Won't Get Fooled Again, the band stopped playing and the group of roadies carried Moon off stage. So eventually they gave him a shower and an injection of Corsa, which is a pregnant steroid hormone. They sent him back on stage after a 30-minute delay. Moon passed out again during the show of Magic Bus. And apparently they just put him back out again. So eventually A 19-year-old boy named Scott Haplin did save the day from playing the rest of the show along with the Who band. Now Keith apparently did have like a lot of destructive behavior. And apparently what I was gonna say is that Moon had gained a lot of weight in 1976 and 1978 due to alcohol and drug addiction, which he could have drunk and he could have ate a lot of alcohol, which caused him to have a lot of weight. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Moon apparently wanted to go to the stage. He wanted to go on tour with the Who band, but Townsend apparently refused to let Keith go on stage unless he stops drinking too much of alcohol, unless he quits that habit. So eventually, due to Moon's destructive behavior, the Who band apparently had to pay a lot of financial things that Keith Moon had broke, especially a lot of objects that he did. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Keith definitely does have like a lot of destructive behavior, especially if he wants to be very destructive. You can let him be destructive. So eventually, there were lots and lots of things that I want to say, but definitely we just passed the 31-minute clock. But let's continue now, since I don't have anything to do. Okay, before the 1998 release of Tony Fletcher's Dear Boy, The Life of Keith Moon's date was supposed to be on August 23rd, 1947, but this was corrected by Fletcher. According to my video of the Who band summary, it was actually corrected to 1946. So eventually what I was going to say is that Keith Moon apparently was born during the baby boomer times. No. So, Keith Moon had a serious relationship with Kim Carrigan. He started dating on January of 1965, but there were problems between Kim and Keith. Keith was very violent. He was a struggling alcoholic. He was severe. He began to hurt Kim. So eventually, when their daughter Amanda was born on 12 July 1966. So eventually, Keith Moon apparently was violent towards Kim. And what I was just gonna say is that she apparently did sue for divorce on 1975, and she took her daughter Amanda with her after Keith Moon's destructive behavior. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Keith did a lot of these things, which are very, 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 very stupid. Stupid. Not to mention stupid, but he also didn't think for himself. Is this right or is this wrong? But anyways, let's continue. So in 1975, Keith Moon had dated former Swedish model Annette Walter Lax. So eventually, she said that Moon was so sweet, but he was sober. And according to the video of the final 24 hours of Keith Moon, Annette described Keith as a teddy bear. Keith was definitely like the teddy bear, you know? So eventually, this was recorded on Moon's chemical intake for breakfast. A bottle of champagne, a Corvair, and appetites. There was no hope for rehabilitation for Keith. Now, Keith apparently accidentally killed his friend Neil Boland back in 1970. It was known because Keith doesn't have a driver's license and he doesn't know how to drive. The mob were throwing rocks onto the car and almost toppled it over. But when Boland apparently did come out of the car to confront the jeering skinheads, things turned out to be a nightmare. Keith, however, drove the car and dragged Boland to his death. If you would think that it's definitely true that Neil Boland was going to survive, think again. Boland did not survive and was pronounced dead after Keith dragged him to death. Now, this is a very scary story I don't want you guys to do. Please don't try to end the same way as Keith did, because this will lead you into dying early. Keith did die at just 32 years old, which I do believe Keith apparently did have some health issues between the days, you know? Now, what I was really going to say about Keith is that after that, it was actually known that Keith had been convicted of a murder, but then there was something that I want to say. This was definitely an accidental murder, and what I was really going to say is that Keith cried. Keith began crying and crying. He also began crying because it's like very sad. It's very sad. Keith began crying. He also cried and cried and cried to say that he was a murderer because he killed Neil Boland. Now, what I'll just say is that it's really, really sad for the drummer to do all these kinds of things. And what I was gonna say is that I'm so sorry that I accidentally say Neil Bollard instead of Neil Boland. Please forgive me for this. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Moon's health did deteriorate by the time he was an alcoholic. In the mid-1978, Keith Moon and his girlfriend apparently moved to Corazon Square, where singer Mama Cass had died of a heart attack 4 years earlier. And in just 24 hours, Keith Moon will be dead. It was renting from Harry Nielsen, who was consenting to let the flat to move. It was cursed. So apparently you can't just do a rumor like that. Now what I'll just say is that Townsend disagreed and nothing was practicing place. So eventually Jeffrey Diamond, who was a physician, was unaware of Keith's lifestyle. Diamond actually described 100 pills. Keith was only allowed to take 1 pill, not more than 3 pills a day. When he felt a craving of alcohol, but not more than 3 pills per day. By September of 1978, just before Keith Moon's death, he had difficulty of playing the drums. According to that, during the studio, Keith was trying to overrub the drums for The Kids Are Alright. After 2 or 3 hours, Keith was sluggish and he could barely hold a drumstick. Now what I was just saying is that Keith's health did deteriorate when he was playing that drum kit. It was sad. It was sad for that. I can't believe Keith Moon would do a thing like that. Now I'll just say that this kind of drug addiction is unacceptable. Even if you want to take a sip of alcohol is fine, but we don't allow people to drink more than 1 sip of alcohol. This will make you drunk and it's not good for you. So on September 6th, 1978, Keith Moon and Annette Walter Lacks were the guests for Paul and Linda McCartney for to reveal the film The Buddy Holly Story to celebrate Buddy Holly's birthday. So eventually, during the time at Peppermint Park in the Covent Garden, Moon and Walter returned to the Lacks where they watched a film, The Animal Dr. Price, and he asked Walter Lacks to cook him steak and eggs. So, eventually Keith Moon apparently was alive by then. But on the next day, once Annette Walter wanted to cook him something else, Keith and Annette went into an argument saying that Keith wanted steak and eggs. But Moon replied very, very harshly, saying a rude word like this: "If you don't like it, you can fuck off." Now that word is a very bad word, and we don't recommend anyone to use that word, especially for friends. Now, I'm not going to show you that one, it's because I don't want to get myself into trouble. So I'm going to leave this one as it is, right now. So eventually, once Keith has finished his meal of steak and eggs, so if you don't like it, you can fuck off, was his last words before Keith Moon had died from a prescription of drug overdose. Now, what I was going to say is that Keith did take a lot of pills. So eventually, once he apparently did finish his breakfast, Moon pops more pills into his mouth and he went back to bed. Keith was snoring and it drove Annette away from Keith snoring. So eventually, what I was going to say is that at around 5 p.m., Annette apparently saw Keith Moon lying on his stomach and she noticed something was wrong with Keith, so she began to call the paramedics. And unfortunately for that, the paramedics tried to revive and tried to restart Keith's heart, but unfortunately for that, Keith Moon was dead. Moon the Loon was dead. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that there has been like a drug overdose with Keith. You see, Keith was apparently gonna take a lot of drugs. It is definitely bad for you. Now, what I was gonna say is that hemavirin is a type of drug that can be only administered to hospitals. If the drug is abused, people would just eat a lot of them. It's not good for their health. This drug is to wean off the alcohol symptoms, especially people who are alcoholic. Now, what I was going to say is that people who have done this, they would have died. Now, this is the saddest thing I would ever say. Now, Moon's death came shortly between the release Who Are You? And apparently in November of 1978, Keeney Jones had joined the Who after Keith Moon's death. Now, what I'll just say about the three remaining Who members of the Who band. When John Entwistle was giving an interview, he was interrupted by a phone call from Anna Walter Lax, stating that Keith Moon was dead. But for the rest of the members, such as Roger Daltrey and Pete Townsend, they heard the news about Keith Moon's death, and unfortunately Keith Moon died of a prescription drug overdose at just 32 years old on September 7, 1978 at 5:50 p.m. And you think that this alcohol thing is going to affect young people? Well, you may be right, because this is what people do when they just have like an alcohol tolerance. Now, what I would just say is that if you guys want to take alcohol, it's fine, but please don't drink that much. If you drink too much of alcohol at once, you can get severely drunk. And your weight, apparently, Keith Moon's weight gain apparently did affect a lot of people. Now, the creators actually did wanted to make Keith weight, they wanted to hide Keith weight's gain. They apparently did that so it will look better, you know? Now, this was actually was kind of serious that there are lots and lots of albums and lots of plaque from the former Marquee Club and the Golders Green Committee saying that Keith Moon was the Who drummer and there was no substitute. He's definitely the rock drummer of the rock giants, the Who. It was definitely sad, and apparently what I was going to say is that there were lots of movies and there were lots of solo albums. Don't worry, the videos of Keith Moon drumming the time before he died is still available on YouTube. And apparently what I was going to say is that there's a solo album called Two Sides of the Moon, which was released in 1975. So apparently, first of all, Doug Sandem was supposed to be the drummer of the Who band, but due to that, Doug Sandem did leave the band after that. Keith Moon was hired, but Keith definitely does have a lot of problems with alcohol and drugs. Now, not to say for the fact that Keith wants to just drink a lot of alcohol, but his health did affect others like that. So I suggest people, please do not drink alcohol. Please do not do all these kind of things. Please don't try to do all these kinds of things which contains alcohol. Now, alcohol is definitely bad, and we don't recommend people to drink alcohol, especially for people who have like this alcoholic syndrome. They want to drink alcohol, they're very addicted to alcohol. So I suggest people not to drink alcohol until they're 21 years old. And also, we recommend people to read the directions first. When taking pills, please read the directions first. Don't take this one very, very seriously. Because taking like 3 times the alcohol, taking 3 times the pills, taking a lot of pills, it's not good for you. It will kill you. And you can end up in a drug overdose. Now, I'm not going to show you these videos of the final 24 of Keith Moon because this one is copyrighted. So I want to leave this one as it is, as I'm going to show this part only, not the rest. Now, after Keith Moon's death, Kenny Jones apparently played for the Who band, but it was not until 1988. Unfortunately for that, in 2002, Entwistle died of a drug overdose. Sorry, not drug overdose. Sorry, I'll start again. In 2002, Entwistle died of a cocaine-infused heart attack, which was contained 20 cigarettes a day, and John Entwistle did smoke a lot of these cigarettes. Now, what I was gonna say is that people would do these kinds of things. They would probably smoke a lot. They probably do have health issues, and we probably can't help you on this. If you try to abuse this kind of things again, it is apparently true that you're going to die. And sometimes when people try to do all these kinds of things, they will do a lot of these things like that. Now, apparently this has been like a 46-minute video. I'm so sorry if I did this like longer, but I don't know if I'm really gonna get a copyright strike or a copyright claim since I'm not gonna do it. But I just hope for the best that this video is gonna be on YouTube, and this video was gonna premiere next year, since I'm not gonna premiere it this year, since I forgot to do this one on Keith Moon's birthday this year. So eventually I'm gonna leave it as it is. So anyways, guys, that's all I really need to say for now on the story of Keith Moon, the late drummer of the Who band. I'm sorry if this video is gonna take that very long, but you guys can watch this video if you want, if I premiere it next year. So eventually, guys, that's all I really need to say for now about the story of Keith John Moon, or you could just say Moon the Loon as in his nickname. And apparently, guys, what I was gonna say is that Keith Moon would have turned 76 this year if he was still alive, and if he stopped drinking, if he'd stopped taking a lot of alcohol and pills. Now, this habit did lead Keith Moon dead. It was scary to see a drummer dying of a young age. Now, there's also one drummer that died in 1980, John Bonham from Led Zeppelin. Unfortunately for John Bonham, he apparently died from an alcohol poisoning. Unfortunately for that, what I was gonna say is that he and Bonham are actually the greatest drummers ever, and what I'll just say about Bonham's style is John Bonham's style was apparently the same thing as Keith Moon's style. There was also another thing about Keith Moon's daughter. Amanda Moon was actually the daughter of Keith Moon, and the mother was actually Kim McLagan. So apparently Kim McLagan, or Kim Carrigan, or her real name is Maurice Elizabeth Patricia Carrigan, was actually the mother of Kim. So eventually, for that, unfortunately in 2006, Kim died in a car accident at just 57 years old back in 2006. Now this is actually a scariest thing, because I know Amanda misses her father a lot. And eventually, what I was gonna say is that now, since Amanda is actually an orphan, since Keith died in 1978 and Kim died in 2006, now what I was gonna say about Amanda Moon is that she apparently has a good memory of her father, Keith Moon. Even if Keith Moon was an alcoholic, she would have been with her father back then. So eventually, what I was gonna say is that Mandy Moon had an earliest memory to cherish the life of Keith Moon, the late drummer of The Who, and also the late mother of Kim Carrigan. Now, there seemed to be a fairy tale palace for a 4-year-old girl, but when she just sees like Keith Moon being violent to her mother, it was very, very scary. Unfortunately for that, Keith did not abuse the daughter. And what I was gonna say is that yes, that thing was very, very scary for Keith's life, especially even if it was an alcoholic, he wouldn't just stop drinking. As of today, Amanda is still alive. She's doing good, even though she misses her mother and father. It definitely means that Amanda is going to have a not so good time because she remembers the late Keith Moon. Now, what I was gonna say is that it was really, really sad for the drummer to die of a drug overdose at just an early age of 32. Now, it's very, very sad and it's very, very tragic for all people to die with a drug overdose at just a young age. But anyways, guys, that's all I really need to say for now. And unfortunately, guys, we just went over our 15-minute mark. Basically, I want to do this video for 1 hour, but then I just decided it's getting really, really tiring because my voice is gonna dry out soon. But anyways, guys, that's all I really need to say for now for the tragic story of Keith Moon and how he was the drummer for The Who. Now, as I was gonna say is that I'm not gonna use the same name, but I'm gonna say this. The story of The Who drummer, Keith Moon, which is a good idea. I'm not copying from anyone, but this is actually my own idea to create stories for you guys. But anyways, guys, that's all I really need to say for now for this video. And apparently, guys, I will see you next time. Peace out, guys. Bye.